Hello, UNLV students and Dr. Ladd. I read the charming book, The One and Only Ivan. Before I discuss Christina Applegate's writing style, which is a combination of Orwellian, Shakespearean, Tolstoy, and Dostoevsky-esque, that of a Russian novelist or playwright poet such as Chekhov. First, I would like to discuss the five or moments that really resonated with me. First is the moment where Ivan said on page 57 that humans like to waste words. They toss them like banana peels. Ivan is a 400-pound mighty silverback, and he is right because as humans, we really do like to waste words. And Ivan can understand that. He also understands human language. He just does not have the ability to speak. It is interesting that we read this book as uh, our students from the perspective of an ape. Ivan is the narrator of the book, which is normally not the case. It's normally a human. So the next part that resonated with me was when, around 15 minutes of the audiobook, when we see that Ivan gets a glimpse into the real world with his black and white TV. One day he sees a glimpse of a gorilla passing by. So he begins to ask questions like, if there's a male gorilla, does that mean there's a female gorilla? And Ivan begins to question the dynamics of his employee boss relationship with Mac. Why am I painting and Mac is selling $20 to $25 a pop my paintings? And why is he the boss and I'm a 400-pound mighty silverback? No man can match me. So those were two important moments for me. Then the part that struck a chord with me as a classical pianist is when uh, Ivan remembered only a few parts about his past, but he remembered that he was an artist. His favorite thing to do was to dip his hands into the mud and paint on his mom's back, using it as a canvas. How patient his mom was. Well, this really struck a chord and resonated with me because I'm a classical pianist, and my favorite thing to do is to play classical piano and to also see the world from an artist's perspective, move my hands on the keyboards. So I can relate to Ivan. The fourth scene was when Stella's health begins to deteriorate and goes from bad to worse. Mac, the cheapskate owner, to save a buck, does not call the veterinarian on time. And Stella's dying wish is that for the new elephant, Ruby, to be free. That she does not want Ruby to end up like that. And finally, at the end of the book, when all is well, Ivan finds the bravery and courage to draw a painting to free Ruby, hoping that Julia or George, the trainer who works there, would see it and give the message to someone. The people begin to protest, and Mac's operation shuts down. And Ruby and Ivan are then saved. And Ivan is in a zoo or at the place where humans like to make amends, as Stella points out. And he's with his family. And he can paint again in the mud like he used to back in the jungle. He doesn't just have a painting of a jungle. And Ruby is not too far by. And she is also with the Pride of Elephants at a nearby pond. And Bob is also there. And Bob is at a good place with humans now. Bob used to think that Westerns are not like real life, where the good guy rides off into the sunset after he mauls the bad guy because he was tossed as a pup from the back of the truck. But now Bob is at a good place now, and he trusts Julia and George. So there was the element of social injustice, which one could see with Stella and Ruby, and Stella understanding that Mac has to use the claw stick, as they refer to it, or the whip, because a baby elephant needs to be trained and they need to have their spirit broken. Unfortunately, that is the harsh truth and reality, and Stella does not want that life for Ruby. So that's what makes it Orwellian. And what makes it Shakespearean is about the story of love and bravery, the love that Ivan has for Stella, the bravery that Ivan displays by staying up all night painting that painting to free Ruby. and all that. And finally, the reason why it's Tolstoy or Dostoevsky, yes, for those who are not familiar with Russian literary style and American, well, American literary style follows the general format of the plot is the center of the story. There's a beginning, middle, and an end. It's the focal point. And there's always a who, what, where, when, why, and how. These characters are primarily secondary. Now, as opposed to Russian literary style of writing, like in the Brothers Karamazov, as you will read if you do and realize that the similarities are one falls in love with the characters of that book more so than the actual plot. In Russian literary writing, the style, it's so vivid and descriptive, just like in this book, one falls in love with the characters and can picture that Ivan, Stella, the elephant, and Bob, the dog, have human-like qualities and are more human-like than animals. So we have discussed how it is Orwellian, Shakespearean, Tolstoyan, Dostoevsky-esque, and to elaborate more, Russian literary style can be a bit melancholy. There is an element or social injustice or message that Russian writers like to give. And one falls in love with the characters more so than the plot of the book, which is what Applegate did in her book, The One and Only Ivan. I really enjoyed listening and reading this book. I wish I would have had the opportunity to as a child. However, reflecting back on it, perhaps I might have not picked up on some of the messages of social injustice, depending on my age. In my paper, I write that children can pick up on messages of social injustice, but it also depends on their age and how advanced or aware they are, or their circumstances. Are they their genetic features? Have they faced oppression? Are they coming from a minority? Are they not a minority? All those have factors in your genetic makeup. And it was really interesting to read this book and be able to relate it to Animal Farm. And Miss Applegate's style reminded me that of a Russian literary novelist or poet. I will definitely be giving this book to my future students one day, whether I am teaching at a parochial school or a public school, whether I'm teaching at elementary, high school, or in academia or in college. I think students of all grade levels can benefit from reading this book and getting that message, and they will fall in love with it because I did. And I have very high standards and do not fall in love with too many books or give close to a 10-minute presentation and a 5-page write-up on a book that I never read or an author I never heard of prior to this assignment. So it really was a pleasure to read this book and get to know the mindset of Miss Applegate. And one can see why she was awarded the Newbery Award list. And with that, I would love to hear feedback from my fellow students and Dr. Ladd. So everyone have a wonderful weekend.